Raymond ran into the hospital like a madman on fire. "Where's my baby?" he shouted, laughing like a little boy promised candy. The nurse smiled and pointed. "Sir, over there, that's your baby girl." Raymond rushed to the crib, full of joy, full of dreams, ready to carry his little princess. But the moment his eyes landed on the baby, he stopped. His smile melted, his hands dropped, his voice choked. "What? What is this?" He stared, frozen, like he had seen a ghost. The baby had patches all over her body. Her face was wrinkled, and her skin looked not like anything he expected. Her eyes were big, watery, and searching for love. "Is this a baby or a punishment?" he whispered, confused and horrified. His loud voice woke Anita, his wife, who was still recovering from childbirth. Her eyelids fluttered like butterfly wings, weak and slow. "Raymond, our baby?" she asked with a soft smile. Raymond turned slowly. His face said it all. Anita gathered her strength and sat up. A nurse handed her the baby gently. But the moment Anita saw her daughter, she gasped so loudly, even the windows seemed to rattle. "No, no, no, no. This is not my child," she screamed, pushing the baby away like it was a hot coal. "Where is my beautiful daughter? The one I carried for 9 months. The one I saw in my dreams, wearing pink dresses and a shiny tiara? Who replaced her with? With this creature?" The nurses looked at each other, tired of the drama already. One of them muttered under her breath, "Here we go again." Another nurse, clearly used to impatient rich mothers, folded her arms. "Ma'am, this is your baby. You can do a DNA test if your TV drama imagination is still running wild." Anita burst into tears. Raymond just stood there, like a man whose world had ended. Later that evening, when the hospital had gone quiet and the moon was hanging like a nosy neighbor, Anita sneaked out of the ward. She held the baby tightly in a shawl, but her hands were shaking. She reached the river, dark, silent, and cold. She looked down at the baby, who was sleeping peacefully. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We can't keep you. You don't look normal. You're not what we planned for." She chuckled bitterly through her tears. "I wanted a princess, not a creature from a horror film. People will laugh at us. They'll call you names. I mean, what kind of baby comes out looking like a burnt potato?" With one final sigh, Anita leaned over the riverbank. "Goodbye forever," she whispered, her hand shaking harder. And just like that, she threw the baby in. Without looking back, she ran like she was running from a crime, because she was. But the baby didn't sink. She floated. Wrapped in the thin shawl Anita used to abandon her, the baby drifted gently on top of the river like she belonged there, as if the river refused to swallow her. She let out a soft cry, weak but steady. It echoed through the silent night, unanswered. The next morning, the sun was just rising. Birds chirped lazily, and the river flowed like nothing happened. Veronica had come to the riverside with her 7-year-old son, Elliot. They often came to sit, talk, and watch the water dance. "Mom," Elliot shouted, pointing ahead, "that's a baby." Veronica blinked, thinking he was joking. "Baby? Elliot, don't start again. We're not here for fairy tales." But Elliot didn't stop staring. "No, Mom. There. On the water. Wrapped in something. I think she's crying." Veronica looked, and her heart skipped. Floating just a few steps away was a real newborn. She rushed to the edge and pulled the baby gently from the water. The baby was cold, crying softly and too weak to scream. Veronica and her son both gasped. "A baby girl." Veronica whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "She's barely a day old." Elliot moved closer. "She looks sick, Mom. We should take her to the hospital." Veronica nodded, hugging the baby tightly against her chest. "You're right, Elliot. We need to go. Now." She didn't wait for another second. With one hand holding Elliot and the other clutching the baby, they rushed off, leaving behind only footprints and a mystery. Later that evening, the story exploded on the news. Breaking. Newborn baby found floating on river, wrapped in a shawl, but alive. The screen showed the baby's picture, tiny, weak, but breathing. Veronica's face was blurred, but her voice was heard saying, "We just found her floating. Thank God she's alive." Across town, in their shiny living room, Anita and Raymond sat on the couch with bowls of fruit beside them, watching the same news. Raymond scoffed and grabbed the remote. So they're celebrating that thing? Anita rolled her eyes and hissed, "If this is what they call a child, it's better not to have one at all." She sipped her wine like nothing happened. No guilt, no regret, just shame, covered with pride. But somewhere in her heart, something was starting to shake, just a little, because the baby they thought was gone forever was still alive. Weeks later, Veronica sat by the hospital bed, watching the little baby sleep with tubes connected to her tiny body. She had no idea what her name was or where she came from, but one thing was clear: she wasn't letting go. The doctors told her straight, this baby needs serious surgeries. Her body is fragile, her bones aren't forming right, her chest is too tight, and she has a rare facial condition. Veronica didn't blink. "Do it," she said. "Whatever it takes, I'll pay." They warned her again. "The surgeries are expensive, ma'am. We're talking about millions." Veronica looked at Elliot, her son, who held the baby's finger like it was gold. "She's family now. Just save her." A week later, Veronica sold her jewelry. Then she sold her car, her second shop, her land in her village. People started whispering, "She don't even know where that baby come from. Are you sure that child no carry curse? She go use her whole life savings for Pekin Way, no even resemble Am?" But Veronica didn't answer anyone. She named the baby Miracle. Because it was a miracle, she survived that river. A miracle she didn't drown. And maybe, just maybe, a miracle for Veronica too. Months passed. Miracle went through one surgery after another. Her legs were fixed. Her chest opened properly. Her jaw and cheeks took shape. But one thing didn't change. Her eyes, those big, bold, wide eyes. Eyes that looked like they saw too much for a child. She sees the world differently. Veronica would say with a smile. That's why God gave her those eyes. And whenever Miracle looked at Veronica with those eyes, there was one thing clear: love. Real love. Even Elliot, now growing older, stood like a big brother, teasing, protecting, and helping feed her mashed food during recovery. At night, when the bills were high and there was no food in the kitchen, Veronica would sit in the dark and whisper to God, "I'm tired, but I won't stop." She didn't choose to be abandoned, but I chose her, and I'll keep choosing her, even if the whole world walks away. Sometimes she cried quietly, but every morning she smiled again. For Miracle. She wasn't rich anymore. She didn't wear gold anymore. But she had a daughter who now calls her Mommy. And that was more valuable than anything money could buy. 5 years later, the mansion was quiet until suddenly, "Wow, I'm finally becoming a father!" Raymond screamed, lifting Anita off her feet, forgetting for a moment that she was 6 months pregnant. She laughed loudly, the kind of laugh that hadn't escaped her lips in years. "Easy, Raymond. This child hasn't even arrived yet, and you want to break me?" But her eyes were glowing, her cheeks full again. The emptiness in the house had turned into planning, decorating, and baby name arguments. After years of failed attempts, hospital visits, fasting, and herbal treatments, Anita was finally pregnant. It was like the past had been erased. Raymond wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "Not a father figure this time. Anita, a real father. This child will know me. Call me Dad. Run to me with arms wide open." Anita leaned her head on his shoulder and nodded slowly. "We've conquered the past, Ray. It's behind us now. No more shame. No more bad dreams." They clinked their wine glasses gently. Grape juice for Anita, champagne for Raymond. "To new beginnings," they both said in unison. Anita rubbed her belly lovingly. "She'll be beautiful, Raymond, just like I imagined." Raymond smiled, his mind already dressing the nursery in pink and white. A princess. Our princess. This time, God got it right. They laughed. They hugged. They dreamt. Meanwhile, Veronica's small apartment was old and cramped, but it overflowed with laughter, love, and loud evening prayers. Raising 2 children on one income wasn't a walk in the park, especially when one of them had frequent hospital checkups and therapy sessions. But Veronica never complained. By day, she worked as a cleaner in a small private school. By afternoon, she picked up extra work as a home laundry woman for 3 wealthy families. At night, she sold roasted corn and plantain by the roadside with Miracle sitting quietly beside her doing homework. Sometimes her fingers bled. Sometimes her feet swelled from standing too long. But every time she looked at Miracle and Elliot, her strength returned like magic. Elliot and Miracle grew up like twins, though 7 years apart. From the day Miracle could walk, Elliot became her shadow. At school, whenever someone laughed at Miracle's large eyes or whispered, "Why does she look like that?" Elliot would stand, fists clenched, and declare boldly, "She sees better than all of you combined, so watch your mouth." He walked her to class, waited outside her therapy sessions, and if anyone dared throw a stone at her from the neighborhood, Elliot threw 2 back, twice as hard. "You touch my sister! You touch me!" he'd shout. Miracle adored him. She followed him around like a little puppy, asked him endless questions, and sometimes even refused to eat until he was home. "You're not my brother. You're my hero," she told him once. Elliot smiled wide and replied, "I'm both. Get used to it." Veronica watched them from the doorway sometimes, exhausted, sweaty, but filled with a quiet pride. "God, thank you. I may not have much, but I have this." On hard days, when there was barely enough food for 3, she would fake a cough and say, "I'm fasting today, children. You eat." Elliot knew she was lying. Miracle didn't, but she always left a piece of fish on her plate for Mommy to taste later. Their clothes were old, their shoes often had holes, but their hearts, rich, full, and deeply connected. They weren't born from the same womb, but raised by the same love. A few months later, at Raymond's house. The once joyful mansion now echoed with tension. Pillows were thrown across the floor, cups half broken, curtains half drawn, and Raymond's voice shook the walls once again. "What kind of pregnancy is this, Anita?" he shouted, pacing back and forth like a man losing his mind. He pointed at her swollen belly that now looked like it belonged to a woman expecting triplets. "You've been pregnant for over a year, a whole year. And every time we go to the hospital, the same story. You're fine. Baby's fine. Then why can't you give birth? What kind of fine is that?" Anita sat silently on the couch, her face pale, her eyes heavy with tears. Her hands never left her stomach, as if trying to protect the unborn child or maybe keep it from escaping. "Raymond," she whispered, voice shaking, "I don't know what's wrong. I've begged the doctor for surgery. I told him I'm tired. I'm scared. But he just said..." She paused, gulping her sobs. "The baby is not ready." Raymond threw his hands up. "Not ready? After 15 months? What's the baby waiting for? Christmas?" His anger wasn't just frustration. It was fear. He moved closer and sat beside her, lowering his voice. They stared at each other, long and hard. Raymond finally spoke again, this time gently, almost like he was begging the truth to reveal itself. "Anita, maybe we miscalculated the timing?" Anita slowly nodded, though her face clearly said, "Even I don't believe that." She rubbed her belly softly. "I feel her move, but sometimes it's not normal. It's not like kicking. It's like twisting." Raymond blinked. "Twisting?" She nodded again, whispering, "Like something inside her is angry." The room went quiet. Then, like a cruel joke, the lights flickered. Thunder rumbled in the distance, even though the sky was clear. Raymond stood up slowly. "Tomorrow," he said, "we're going to see another doctor, a specialist this time. I don't care how much it costs. This has gone on long enough." Anita wanted to speak, but suddenly gasped and held her belly. Raymond rushed back to her side. "What? What is it?" Anita's face twisted in pain. I think she's trying to say something." Raymond stared at the belly. It shifted, almost like something pushed from inside. Not just a kick, but a slow press, as if a hand was trying to reach out. Raymond stepped back slowly. Something was not right. Something deeper, darker. Years later, the world knew her name. Dr. Miracle Coleman, the youngest gynecologist in the world. At just 21, she had performed surgeries that senior doctors ran away from. She walked boldly into operating theaters where hope was dead and brought life back. She dared to touch the cases that were labeled hopeless. Women from different parts of the world flew to see her. Hospitals booked her 2 years in advance. Medical journals called her the girl with the healing hands. And yes, her eyes were still very wide, but now they were a signature of brilliance, bold, focused, fearless. Reporters would say, those big eyes don't just see the body, they see the soul. And the world loved her. While Miracle handled the womb, Elliot focused on the brain. Now a certified neurologist, Dr. Elliot Coleman was the calm genius behind his sister's fire. Together, they became a global medical team. One handled the beginning of life. The other preserved the mind. Wherever Miracle was flying, Elliot was not far behind. They were inseparable. And their mother? Madame Veronica, now in her 60s, lived like a queen, not the kind with diamonds and gold, but the kind whose name was carried with honor. She no longer roasted corn by the roadside. She no longer bent over people's laundry in the rain. Now she sipped fresh juice on her veranda in a mansion her children built for her. Whenever guests came, Miracle would rush to serve her food. Elliot would pull out her chair and say, "This is the woman who raised 2 doctors with sweat and scraps." And every time Veronica looked at them, her eyes filled with silent tears. "I am blessed to have you both. Both of you are my greatest swaggers." Back at the new Raymond's house. The once beautiful mansion was gone. Now they lived in a rented, cracked bungalow with leaking ceilings and dust-covered furniture. Raymond and Anita sat silently on a broken wooden bench outside their fading compound, both staring into nothing. Her stomach was still there. Large, still, heavy, 15 years pregnant. It had become a joke across town. People used to whisper. Then they laughed. Now, they didn't even care anymore. It was like watching a long, strange movie that refused to end. Their marriage was a battlefield. No love, no joy, just pain stitched together with shame. Raymond rubbed his bony arms. Once a man of wealth and respect, now a shadow of himself. He looked at Anita's stomach again and shook his head slowly. 15 years, Anita. Even elephants don't carry for that long. Anita didn't respond. Her eyes were sunken. Her voice rarely came out anymore. Sometimes she didn't know if she was alive or just waiting to die. They had sold everything. The house, the cars, Raymond's once booming company, even his awards, everything. All in search of a solution that never came. One prophet said it was a spiritual baby. One doctor said it was a rare condition. One herbalist told her to sleep in a forest naked for 7 nights. She did it all. Nothing worked. Then one hot afternoon, as they sat in silence, a neighbor came rushing in, panting and sweating. "Anita, Anita, you fit finally deliver this your Pekin way. No one, come out." Raymond groaned and hissed. "You again? With your last hope suggestions?" That's how we ended up feeding a fake prophet for 3 months. That's how we lost our last savings chasing hope. You people won't let us die in peace. But the neighbor didn't leave. She sat on the bench, wiping her face with her scarf. "Raymond, I know you don't believe again, but listen, there's this new gynecologist. Very young, very brilliant. They say she's a miracle worker. She runs a foundation that helps impossible medical cases for free. Each month, she chooses 5 patients." Raymond scoffed. "And you think she'll pick us? Look at us. No TV, no internet. We can't even beg properly." "But someone can recommend you," the neighbor replied. "She doesn't care about status. If the case is strange, she checks it." Anita looked up slowly for the first time in hours. Her voice came out soft and dry. "What's her name? This doctor?" The neighbor smiled. "They call her Dr. Miracle." Raymond stood, stared at the wall, and laughed bitterly. "Miracle, and that's what we've been chasing for 15 years. Maybe this is just another fancy name to break our hopes again." But then he saw Anita, looking at her stomach, then at him, eyes filling with fresh tears. "I want to try," she whispered. "One last time." Raymond didn't speak for a while. Then he sighed, defeated. Fine, one last time. But if this one fails, then maybe it's true. This pregnancy is meant to go with you to the grave. They didn't even own a phone that could browse. No TV, no newspapers. Just a neighbor's word and a dying wish. At the Miracle Foundation Center, Raymond and Anita arrived at the compound with dust on their clothes, tired eyes, and heavy hearts. Their neighbor, who had insisted they follow her, practically dragged them to the gate. But the timing couldn't have been worse. The fifth and final patient for the month had just been selected. "Please," the neighbor screamed, pushing through the small crowd. "This woman needs help more than any other person here. Look at her, 15 years pregnant and still suffering. Please let her see the doctor." The security guard stood firm. "We're sorry. Miracle Foundation does not break rules. Only 5 cases per month. No exception." Anita fell to her knees. Her stomach, still heavy after all these years, was now a symbol of torment. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "Please, even if it's just to see her. Let me just see her," she begged weakly. Raymond's jaw tightened as he stepped forward. "We've sold everything. Our house, our cars, my company, gone. All chasing this one miracle. Just one." The guards were unmoved. "We understand your pain, sir, ma'am, but the foundation is very strict. The news about the selection has been airing for weeks. You must be here before 8 a.m. We're truly sorry." Anita's tears fell, mixing with the dust beneath her knees. Raymond looked away, too broken to console her. Then something caught Anita's eye, a poster on the wall beside the gate. She blinked and looked again. There, staring back at her with piercing bold eyes, was the image of a young woman in a white lab coat. Dr. Miracle. Under the photo, a short story was printed. "I was abandoned by the river at birth because of my medical conditions. I survived after multiple surgeries and care which cost my foster mother her fortune. Today, I help humanity with the same solution that would have rendered me useless. For now, Miracle Foundation treats 5 impossible cases every month, free of charge." Anita's mouth fell open. Her voice cracked. "Raymond, look at those eyes." Raymond turned, squinting at the image. "Those eyes, they're..." Anita's hand trembled as she touched the poster. "Those are my daughter's eyes. The baby I left by the river, the one I thought was cursed. The one I threw away." Raymond stumbled backward, his voice barely a whisper. "No, that can't be." The neighbor stood confused. "Threw who away? Anita, what are you saying?" Anita grabbed the neighbor's hand tightly. She's the child I gave birth to. The one I threw into the river because her eyes were too big, because she looked irritating. She can't breathe properly. She's just like a skeleton. I thought she was a curse. Oh God, that's my baby." Raymond's mouth dropped. He staggered back and sat heavily on the ground. "So, after everything, all this pain, all this suffering, that child didn't die?" The neighbor gasped. "So Miracle is your daughter? And she's the same doctor running this foundation?" Anita began wailing uncontrollably. "I left her to die, and now she's the one helping the world, while I've been carrying this punishment for 15 years. Oh God, I'm cursed! I am cursed!" One of the guards, overhearing the commotion, called the attention of the foundation's coordinator inside. Minutes later, a woman in white coat approached. "What's going on here?" Raymond managed to gather himself and stood up, wiping tears. Please call Dr. Miracle. Tell her parents are here. Tell her the woman who threw her in the river is dying with a 15-year pregnancy. Tell her mother begs for mercy." The coordinator raised a brow, unsure what to believe. But the sincerity in their broken faces touched her. "Dr. Miracle is currently in surgery, but I'll let her know." As the gate slowly closed behind the coordinator, Anita collapsed into Raymond's arms, sobbing. "She won't forgive me. She'll never forgive me. I don't deserve it." Raymond looked up at the poster once more, tears running down his face. "But she has a good heart," he whispered. "Maybe, just maybe, our daughter will hear us." Hours later, Doc Miracle stepped out of the last surgery room, her gloves stained, her shoulders weary, but her heart content. She had just completed her 5th impossible case for the month, another life saved. Without removing her scrubs completely, she slipped into her white coat, picked up her bag, and walked briskly through the back corridor. Her driver was already waiting. The gates swung open smoothly as her black SUV rolled out of the compound. Anita, still seated on the curb, clutched her aching back while Raymond stood nearby, eyes scanning every car that passed. The gateman, seeing their eagerness, casually said, "That's her, Dr. Miracle. She just left." Raymond blinked. "What? That was her?" "Yes, sir. She never waits around after surgery. She always rushes home to relax and recharge for the next day. She doesn't attend to anyone after closing time." Anita gasped, her lips trembling. "Raymond, do you think she saw us and drove past on purpose?" Raymond frowned. Or maybe no one told her. Maybe the message never got to her. But deep inside, both of them were gripped with panic. Was their daughter, the same daughter they abandoned by the river, now the miracle worker, ignoring them? The next day, they came again, and the next, and the next. But every time they arrived, the response was the same. "Dr. Miracle is not around. She's on appointments. She's in another state saving lives. She'll be gone for the next few days." Still, they waited. Rain or shine, dusty wind or scorching sun, they sat outside the gates of the Miracle Foundation, clinging to the hope that one day she would see them, listen to them, maybe even forgive them. Weeks passed. Anita grew weaker. Her swollen belly now made it hard to breathe, let alone move. But she refused to stay home. "I must see her," she whispered one day, "even if it's the last thing I do." Then one quiet evening, around 5 p.m., a sleek black SUV turned into a quiet neighborhood and slowed down in front of a massive gate. It was Dr. Miracle returning home from another long day. She leaned back in the seat, rolling her neck slowly. Her driver turned to her. "We're home, Ma." "Thank you," she said softly. As the gates to her private residence began to slide open, she noticed 2 figures sitting by the gate. A man stood up and gently tapped on the car window. The woman beside him, frail, dusty, and heavily pregnant, suddenly dropped to her knees. Dr. Miracle, startled, signaled for the window to be rolled down halfway. She leaned out. "Hello, how can I help you?" she asked gently. But before the man could speak, the pregnant woman clasped her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, forgive us," her voice cracked. Dr. Miracle blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" The woman looked up, face drenched in tears, dust caked around her eyes. "We are your parents. We are the ones who threw you away by the river. We thought you were cursed. We didn't know you were a miracle." The air stood still. Dr. Miracle stared at them, her breath frozen. Her heart began to race, and in that moment, the world blurred, as memories she had buried came crashing to the surface. Dr. Miracle wound up her car window and drove past Raymond and Anita without a word. Her face was pale, her hands tightened on the steering wheel as emotions raged within her like a storm. By the time she stormed into the house, her footsteps were heavy, her breath unsteady. Veronica, seated on the couch, knitting a sweater, looked up and immediately noticed her daughter's disturbed countenance. "Daughter, is everything all right?" Veronica asked softly, placing her hand over her heart. Miracle hesitated, then sighed heavily. "I don't know, Mum. Someone just rattled my spirit." Without explaining further, she picked up her phone and dialed. Within minutes, Elliot drove in like lightning. The moment he stepped inside, worry was written all over his face. "Miracle, what is it? Talk to me." She didn't speak. Instead, she called the gateman. "Please, bring them in," she whispered. Elliot looked confused. Moments later, Raymond and Anita walked into the house, their eyes wide, their steps shaky but hopeful. As they sat down, Miracle stood in front of them, her face unreadable. She turned to Veronica and Elliot and said with disbelief in her voice, "Mom, bro, can you imagine? They're here to tell me they are my real parents." Veronica gasped, holding her chest. Elliot raised a brow, then scoffed slightly and said sarcastically, "Well, If she's your daughter, please go with her now. Do you need permission for that too? Raymond's eyes welled up. He stood and clapped his hands together in a pleading gesture. Please, forgive us. We know we failed. We know we don't deserve this moment. But we came to make peace just once. Please. Veronica glanced at Miracle and gently touched her hand. My daughter, I've taught you about forgiveness. Even in the pain, we must not let hate eat us up. Forgive them, not for them, but for you. Miracle closed her eyes, nodded slowly, then looked at Anita and Raymond. I forgive you, she said, truly, from the depth of my heart. But let's be clear, you will never be my parents. You lost that title the day you threw me into that river like I was trash. Veronica is my only mother. Elliot is my only brother. You are just strangers. It's night. Please leave my house, and goodbye. As they stood in tears, Anita suddenly staggered and slipped. Raymond caught her just in time, but she collapsed in his arms. Anita! Raymond screamed. Panic ensued. Miracle, with instinctive compassion, rushed over and checked her pulse. She needs to get to the hospital now, she commanded. Hours later, Anita was admitted. 2 days later, Raymond returned, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He waited outside the gate until Miracle returned. Please, just one more moment, he begged. Miracle stood coldly in front of him. Why are you still here? He went on his knees. She's been pregnant for 15 years. You were the only child we had. After what we did to you, nothing worked again. No child, no peace. This pregnancy came years later, and we carried it with shame. That's why we came, so she could at least deliver under the care of the child we once discarded. Something shifted in Miracle's heart. She clenched her fists. God, why must you test my heart like this? That evening, she visited Anita at the hospital. Anita turned weakly on the bed, her eyes brimming with tears. Mother, Miracle said gently, you hurt me more than life itself. But I forgive you again. I do. But you can never be my mother. Never. Before Anita could respond, a sharp cry escaped her lips. Labor had begun. Miracle immediately took charge, guiding the nurses, holding Anita's hand through the pain, and whispering instructions. Minutes later, as the cries of the newborn echoed through the hospital room, Dr. Miracle stood frozen. Her eyes widened the moment she saw the baby, her little sister. The child's body was frail, just like skeleton, her skin pale, and her limbs slightly twisted, with an unusual dent at the center of her chest. It was shocking. Even Miracle, trained to handle the most difficult of births, flinched. It reminded her too much of her own beginning. But what surprised her even more wasn't the baby. It was Raymond and Anita. Without hesitation, Anita reached out and cradled the baby close to her chest, tears falling freely as she whispered lullabies only a mother could sing. Raymond leaned in and gently kissed the baby's forehead. His eyes, once proud and blind, now shone with deep sorrow and a father's fierce devotion. He looked down at the child and whispered through trembling lips, My child, my world, I will protect you, and I will make sure you fulfill your purpose on this earth. Nothing and no one will abandon you again. Miracle's chest tightened. For a moment, she didn't see the selfish parents who had once thrown her away like a curse. They were different, broken, remorseful, transformed, and somehow, through the child they once feared, they had found courage to love again. Anita turned to Miracle, her voice barely above a whisper. We've learnt our lesson. Too late for you, but maybe not too late for her. Miracle looked at the child, so tiny, so fragile, and then at her former parents, still kneeling at her feet. Silence hung in the air like a question. Would she walk away again? Or would she extend the same compassion she had been denied? She swallowed, wiped the corner of her eyes, and said quietly, I'll monitor her condition. Not because you asked, but because she deserves a chance. Anita nodded through tears. Raymond bowed his head in gratitude. For the first time in a long while, there was no shouting, no blame, just healing. Quiet, painful, and slow, but healing all the same. Though the atmosphere had softened that night, Dr. Miracle's decision remained unshaken. She helped the nurses stabilize the baby, prescribed follow-up tests, and personally monitored her breathing before stepping aside. Raymond and Anita watched her every movement with silent hope, but Miracle didn't spare them a second glance. As she walked out of the ward, Elliot, who had just arrived after her call, met her at the hallway. "How's the baby?" he asked. "She'll live," Miracle replied, tiredly pulling off her gloves. "She's strong, just like I was." Elliot placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Miracle looked through the hospital glass at Raymond and Anita standing beside the incubator, eyes red and shoulders slumped. "They're still strangers to me," she said coldly. "But the child, she's innocent. She doesn't deserve rejection like I did." Elliot nodded. "Then we raise her with love, even if we don't share blood." Weeks passed, and true to her word, Dr. Miracle never allowed Raymond and Anita into her personal life. She remained respectful but distant, a wall always present between them. However, she and Elliot poured their hearts into supporting the newborn. They named her Destiny. Miracle made sure Destiny received the best care, hiring a private pediatrician, providing organic breast milk supplements, and even personally checking in after surgeries. Elliot, ever the protective brother, made the nursery warm and colorful, complete with books, soft lights, and music that soothed the baby to sleep. Raymond and Anita remained on the sidelines, watching, grateful, heartbroken, regretful. But they never crossed the boundary Miracle had drawn. One evening, as Veronica rocked baby Destiny in her arms, she looked at Miracle and said, "You're doing for her what I did for you." Miracle smiled gently. "And I finally understand why you did it all, Mom. Thank you." Veronica kissed her forehead. She might not have been born into love, but she's surely being raised in it. Elliot walked in just then, bottle in hand, and grinned. "Dinner for Princess Destiny is ready." They all laughed softly, the sound echoing through the cozy home. Destiny had become a bridge between pain and healing, not for the ones who gave her life, but for the ones who chose to love her. Hello, my besties. This story is a deep reminder to every parent out there. Children are not problems to throw away. They are gifts to embrace, no matter how they look or what challenges they bring. Raymond and Anita once failed, but life gave them another chance. This time, they chose love over shame. Miracle may never call them mom or dad, but she chose not to transfer pain. Instead, she embraced her baby sister with love, proving that healing is possible, even when trust is broken. Moral lessons. Number. Parents, love your children the way they are. Every child is unique and deserves acceptance. Number 2. A child you reject today may become the blessing you'll search for tomorrow. Forgiveness is strength, but boundaries are wisdom. If this story touched your heart, comment your thoughts, subscribe, and stay seated for more powerful folktales. Tell me, besties, what does parenting mean to you? I love you all. See you in the next video.